It seems easy at first glance. It's just a simple thing, really. Fear not. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. But every time I hear it, fear not, I have a vision of long ago. I can see myself as a 7-year-old going to bed and making sure that the night light was ready when the light went off. In fact, I was so deathly afraid of the dark that my parents had multiple levels of assurances to make sure that if darkness came, there was a light somewhere. A closet light, a hallway light, a bathroom light, a kitchen light. You never knew what would happen if JC found himself in darkness. Oh, I know what would happen. My heart would sink. It would begin to race. Anxieties would rise. I would be paralyzed and not knowing what this darkness might bring into the room, what kind of monsters might crawl from under the bed. Fear is paralyzing. It has a visceral reaction in our bodies. Oh, maybe you might not have been afraid of the dark, but we have all been afraid of something. And it has that same effect on us, whether we're 7 or 97. Fear can captivate our imaginations. Fear can literally fog our minds. It can make us not think straight. So it seems so silly just to say, fear not. And yet here we are, aren't we? As we've said already, it is a constant refrain in Scripture, fear not. And yet, we are bombarded with fears throughout our lives every single day. They all have a similar thing in common. Often, those fears are rooted in the unknown. They're rooted in the obscure. They're rooted in that which we might not be able to understand. Those fears are indeed rooted often in what we might call the darkness. So it makes sense. Humans have this response. We are evolutionary built to survive, and so of course you're going to want to know your surroundings. You don't want obscurity. You never know what threats might be out there in the world, but maybe we've been too afraid of that which is obscure. Maybe we've been too afraid about the unknown. Maybe we've been a bit too afraid about the darkness. Writer Barbara Brown Taylor, in her little book called Learning to Walk in the Dark, says that it's quite interesting that human beings are afraid of the dark because we are born in the darkness of the womb. She says it's interesting that we're afraid of the dark because our own creation story begins in the darkness, and it is in the darkness that the light emerges. She says, it's interesting that Christians are afraid of the dark because our central story is a story of a God who leaves the beauty and the majesty of outside of time and space and and inhabits this world of ours. And then experiences not just the womb of Mary, but the tomb. We rooted in this story, a story centered really on darkness. and in what it means to be there. So what would it look like for us to fear not in the midst of life? To fear not in the midst of the ups and downs of life, to fear not in the midst of our own sojourns that we have in each of our lives. What does it look like to be like those shepherds long ago who kept watch over their flocks by night? Oh, there's a gift to darkness and to nighttime. We need that reset in our bodies. We spend a big chunk of our lives asleep. We need that reset. But there are other gifts. Just this week, I was reminded of something that I'd forgotten. Now, listen, I know I was taught this in school, but it's amazing how much we forget. That's probably why I wasn't really helpful when my kids were in school, helping them with anything. I'd forgotten. But I was reminded that the stars in the sky are always there. It's just that we cannot see them during the day. The sun too bright, outshining the stars in the sky. So it is in the nighttime, in the darkness, that we can see the stars in the sky. Evening, a gift of possibility and of imagination. If we just sit there a little longer. Oh, I'm not asking you to make permanent residence in the darkness. I'm asking you to not be as negative about it. I'm asking you to not be afraid and to sit in it just for a little while. It's in there are gift sets, possibilities in it. There is this quietness. Winter, a gift. Hibernation, important. If we just allow ourselves to not hurry out of it, the experience wouldn't have been the same for shepherds if they would have had flashlights and iPhones. Oh, they would have probably pulled their phone out and recorded the angels. That's what they would have done. Check this out, TikTok. It was in the darkness of that moment that a great gift was seen. Maybe you are in that moment in your life. Things obscure. You lacking clarity about next steps in your journey. Maybe you're in the twilight of life. Maybe you've had a rough go for a while. Sit there a minute. You're not alone. Oh, that's the other lesson for us on this Fear Not series, is that maybe the invitation in the midst of the darkness is a reality check, a reminder that we're not alone. So if we're not alone in it, then that means who's companioning us in it. And I have some good news for you. You are companion in it. And the bad news is we are companions of each other in it. Maybe the call, as a writer that I read this week tells us, is that the call is to make a decision to companion each other in those moments of our life. To purposely in this season to go into the margins. Now those margins and those obscure places and those places that seem dark might be really scary for us. We're unsure. These places are not familiar, and because they're not familiar, they raise our anxieties. But maybe if we begin to push some of our own boundaries, we might be able to inhabit them better together. We becoming sources of hope, and we becoming sources of peace, and we becoming sources of reconciliation. And in that companioning, we finding ourselves transformed and renewed, new eyes to see and new ears to hear. Our friends and co-workers, our neighbors and strangers in this season needing companioning through the evenings of their life, through the obscurity of night. And we well suited together to companion others in that way. I've been wondering about that evening companioning, about a fire at night, about angels showing up in a field. Fear not, they say, for behold. Behold means to look. I can actually see it every time I hear it. I can see it. Behold, look, don't miss this. So maybe First-Plymouth, we become a people who help others in the midst of their dark walking and dark inhabiting to behold. We pointing towards the angels. Don't miss it, we say. Look, good news of great joy are possible. Oh, I know that this moment might seem like hopeless. I know this season of your life seems like it might be the end. I know that they're not easy answers for your most desperate questions. I know. But look, behold, good news are possible. God has broken into history. Look, behold, good news of great joy around the corner for you and for us and for the world. We, in the midst of the realities of the margins, of the realities of life, holding tightly to one another, hard-headedly reminding ourselves and the world that light shines. In fact, so often in the darkness, the smallest light can be perceived. Fear not. I'm no longer afraid of the dark. I have other fears these days. They're as visceral as the fears of that 7-year-old. And I don't fear them just for me. I fear them for my children. I fear them for my neighbor. I fear them for the stranger that I encounter at the Russes on Washington and 17th. But in those moments when I'm paralyzed, I can see the shepherds pointing, the angel saying, "Fear not, for behold, love wins in the end." For you, Juan Carlos, and for all of creation, fear not, for behold, love is near.